This is our presentation workshop called I'm Graduating Soon, Help, How Do I Get into the Tech Industry? We have Tessa here who's going to walk us through a lot of what she's learned over the years, but also to really dive into how the tech field is booming and more companies are moving to full remote, giving options to work at different tech companies. There's so many software engineering jobs and it just seems kind of overwhelming and maybe difficult to achieve. Tessa's been in the tech field for 9 years now, and part of it was teaching programming at a college, working with students, and also being a student herself. Clearly to see a pattern of how you can become zero to successful if you follow a simple plan. So I'm gonna let Tessa take it away here to really go over what that plan might be.
Thank you. All right, so this also works if you're not a college student and trying to get into the tech field. I wanted to also touch on that because a lot of the people, especially senior engineers that I know, I think it's like a nice split 50-50 between people who are computer science or web application developer, have those degrees in comparison to those who are self-taught. You can go either way, especially a lot of these companies are dropping the requirement of a degree, but it does help a lot, and some people need to have this college education to help guide them on learning. So, if you're in college now or graduated recently or just teaching yourself, this will all be very, very helpful. So this is an open Q&A. If you already asked a question and submitted it, I have your questions as slides throughout the presentation. So I will touch on your question through the subtopics. So a little bit about my career path. I started out just doing regular sales, working at GameStop, jewelry stores, human resources, just regular jobs. And then I decided to go to college and learn how to write code. And I did some mini internships while I was in college. It was like part of the degree where you had to do like, I had to do 2-3 month internships unpaid. Well, it could have been paid, but that's actually really difficult to find. So I did assistant teaching. I found someone who runs her own web development company and I interned there. I offered to intern. And then after graduating, I searched everywhere for a developer job and ended up landing a job, and also got a side job doing web support training. A lot of the questions I didn't know the answer to, so it was a lot of researching and learning to help others. I was really great at learning at a very, very fast pace, so I took advantage of that to help others, and which I still do now. And then I became a teacher at a college here in Seattle, and I was teaching full-time web application development courses, JavaScript frameworks, PHP, all of the above. And then I became a developer advocate. For those who are not familiar with developer advocacy, it's basically someone who has been in software engineering for quite a while, who has experienced public speaking or teaching or both, and basically advocate and go out there, help developers, help others, relay information between users and your company, being the liaison between departments at your company. There's a lot involved with being a developer advocate, and it's a lot of fun. And now I'm a developer advocate again, but more on the project management strategy side of things and doing more leadership related stuff. So that's my whole career path. I also have a open source contribution career path as well, which is completely separate, but also goes on a resume, but I'll go over that later. So here's the agenda or subtopic. So if you have any questions related to different pieces of this, let me know if you haven't asked it already. So during college, what should you do? Learning and creating stuff, contributions, building a personal brand, networking and events, find a mentor for that dream job, mock interviews and interview prep, career growth, and cover letters. I know that's a big thing. Resumes are practically easy now because there's so many templates out there, but cover letters are a little more personal, so it gets confusing. And I know a lot of people will be stuck on that first sentence. I've been really bad at cover letters until probably the last couple years, until it finally clicked in my head, what makes a good cover letter. And I'll go over the breakdown of that based on my previous a few cover letters. So during college, should you be doing anything now before graduating? What should you do to prepare? So one thing I've noticed that a lot of college students will just, do their work and do what they need to do, and then that's it. When you start preparing to get a job, you need to start while you're in school. It's never too early to start. The earlier you get started to prepare, the better it is. So you need to create projects, what you're doing in school. Every line of code you write, everything that you create, save it. Even if it's a project that you've manipulated and changed and rewrote, that's your project. Save it all on a GitHub repository, or GitLabs or whatever you use, and make sure it's public and something that you can share. If you're not proud of something you've created, just have code reviews, have friends code review it, and keep improving on it. Find any kind of internships or try to do projects for others and just, learn stuff. Do industry research, and figure out what kind of role you're looking for. What you understand is, oh, there's a software engineer position. There's actually so many roles. I didn't even know developer advocacy was even a position. If I knew about that years before or even during college, I would have worked my way to that quickly. But that kind of fell into my lap from, just the things I was working on, and my interest kind of moved towards that role by itself without me even realizing that. But figure out what areas of technology you like, and it just branches off in so many different sectors, and then that branches off in so many different areas. But and I know right now your main focus is just trying to land that job, so that's probably the most important thing, and then you can learn and figure things out from there. And make a plan, by this date I'm going to apply to this many jobs. By this date I need to get this many interviews or land a job by this date. And I've noticed there's a certain set of people that I know who's complaining I can't find a job, I can't get a job. But then how many jobs have you applied for in the last month? 2 of them, and it's been 2 months, but I haven't heard back from them. I'm still waiting to hear back. No, there's a lot more work involved to find a job. You don't just apply to one job and then just wait. So there's a process behind that too. So make that plan, make that timeline where you need to kind of organize your life of what you want, and build that progression to get there. So here's the question that was asked, which I mentioned right when I started. Do you need to have a degree when applying for a tech job? Do you have any advice for how to apply for a job and convince a potential employer at an interview that you're competent if you don't have a degree? I would say I've actually asked this question a lot because a lot of my friends in the industry, since I've been in it almost a decade, a lot of my friends have grown from engineers to now they're actually management or directors or VPs of companies at this point in time. And the biggest thing they look for is how you troubleshoot, how you solve problems, how you figure things out, how quick you are to pick up and learn things, what projects you've created. It's really about your competence level and your ability to prove that you have that. So A degree does help. Like, for example, if you apply to a job, you don't know anyone at the company, you have no connections, and they're going through resumes. Of course, they're going to say, oh, this person has a computer science degree. That's going to be helpful. But if you have a connection and you know someone, it really doesn't matter at all. And I'm going to go over something related to that down this presentation. So like Microsoft, Google, I know a lot of the big five companies dropped the requirement of a degree. It's really about proving your competence and your skill and your ability. But there are a lot of companies that say, you know, minimum requirement, bachelor's degree. I didn't add a section on my presentation about that part, but if you fit like at least 50% of the requirements for a job, I've never fit more than 50%. A lot of the people that, you know, landed these really good jobs doesn't even fit all the requirements. I mean, a whole team should fit the whole requirements of a job description. Because everyone has different strong skill sets in different areas. I have very strong skill sets in 50% of my job description, and those are the areas I focus on. And then I have teammates that are really strong in the other half, and they focus on that area. So that's something to keep in mind. I know it's nice to, you know, have all of those skills, but it's impossible to, you know, be proficient with everything. That's crazy to find someone, you know, like that. But if you are proficient in everything, that's great too. You might have a bigger chance to get that job. What's that? Okay, I think someone's volume is on.
Perfect, I muted him.
No problem. So learning and creating, this is like the most important thing. This is like something I focused on while I was in college, is just learning and absorbing as much as I can. I did get frustrated a lot. Like I was just, my biggest frustration was there's just so much information to take in, but I can't memorize any of it. Like I have to go in like just to do basic, like even in my job, not even back in school, even in my job, like doing a basic PHP date format. Like I had to look it up every time, even though I was writing that kind of code. Like so often, I just cannot memorize it if my life depended on it. And I look it up every single time. Then I realized people who's been in the industry for 20 years, 30 years, they still research, Google everything. There's like in the job, there's like one error that I keep running into and I forget how to fix. And I go and Google research and I end up going back to my own tutorial on how to fix the error. Like it's that crazy. And it's common. So don't feel discouraged if you just cannot like absorb information. It's really about knowing how to look up information, how to, you know, find information, what to look for. So what you're really learning in school is like how everything pieces together and how you can find this information and troubleshooting and making a lot of mistakes and trying to fix those mistakes. And one thing you'll notice over a period of your career is every time you run into an issue, you're like, wait a minute, I've fixed this before. Or wait a minute, maybe it has something to do with the wrong version of, maybe I have to downgrade Node.js to make this work or something like that. Just your experience actually helps you fix a lot of problems. And you know, being first year software engineer, you're not going to have that kind of experience. So it's going to take you longer to fix and do things. You have 10 years of experience, you're like, okay, you're running into a problem, you have no idea. And this is my favorite thing about going to hackathons. I like to help people troubleshoot in coding language I've never even used, because I just understand the process of troubleshooting, and I've like seen and understand like issues or errors people get and how to work through that. And a lot of it's kind of working out and walking through the problem, going down to learning, creating, create as much as you can, and break things, fix things. That's the big thing. It's not really about writing perfect code and putting it out there. It's what have you created? What kind of issues have you ran into? How did you fix it? What did you learn from it? That's so important. It's really, really important, is the amount of learning from mistakes. Like, to become better at anything, you have to screw up and do things wrong and work through those mistakes. And that's where you find growth in yourself. That's how you become better at your job. Like, no one's a perfect engineer, no one's a perfect developer. One thing, if I can go back in time, back in 2011 on my engineering job, one thing, I was really shy about my code. That's all I was doing. Is I was a one-person team for an engineering department that put all of their design files and all of their engineering files. And it says your internet connection is unstable. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Okay.
Yep.
And building out all these tools for approval processes to happen between 3 different companies and different departments working together on approving the same products. And I always felt like, I'm so scared for people to see my code because I don't even know if it's good. I didn't. And I kind of wish that I showed parts of my code and made friends with senior engineers, or had some like senior engineer mentor that would do a code review and say, hey, like, look, can you take a look at this and let me know if there's a way to make this better? And, it's good to have someone to say, oh, you need to work on more best practices. You can be more efficient in various ways. You can write this in a cleaner way. You can, so I eventually did, after a couple years into it, because I was just like, oh, it took me 2 years to have the guts to have someone look at my code. And this person introduced me to like shorthand, like, oh, this is like how you can write all this in like half the amount of code. Oh, let me show you how to write this better. And it's like, oh, wow, that's really easy. Like, I don't know why I wasn't doing that before. I had no idea I can even do that. No one told me. People can tell you these things. You can know these things. If senior engineers are happy to, a lot of them are happy to help juniors or interns become better. People want to see you do better. They don't want to see you fail. They love it when you speak up. And I can't rewind the time now, but I'm sharing my experience of what I wish I did, and to not be shy about it. Because in my head, I'm thinking they're going to look at my code and laugh and be like, that's so bad. It works, but it's bad. But, it could have been the best code ever if I had people just review it and give me their professional advice. So that touches me in a very soft spot, because there's no going back on that. So here is my secret to what landed me a 6-figure job really, really quickly. I had no idea. This kind of like, everything kind of like fell into my lap, because I'm like a natural networking person. I love to talk to people and go out there and meet people. And that's just, how I've always been. Me, for example, my very first job, during my first week at my job, I started researching events, and I told my boss, like, oh, there's a training workshop at this one conference. I've never been to a developer conference, but I really want to attend this like full week workshop or full day workshop. And I ended up making friends there, and they're like, I'm part of an open source project. I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, we're looking for volunteers. I'm like, volunteer, like work for free on a software project. So I have a rule where I don't say no to everything immediately. I like to just learn about opportunities, hear more about it. And I ended up getting convinced to join an open source project. And that was 2012. Yeah, I think it was like January 2012. So contributions is very similar to work experience. I put all my contributions on my resume. They look at it as actual work experience. If you have no work experience and you have a whole section of projects you've contributed to, that's just as good as work experience. So anyone who's currently involved in stuff like that, like you have a stepping stool in front of, you're above everyone else basically to be able to get a job.
That's actually what this fellowship is all about, is those contributing to open source.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah, I was just doing a little bit reading about that. I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot of opportunity.
So it's discussing how important it is to, find the right project that fits you, find what interests you. Maybe you found an open source project or free and open source project that you've been working on that you find, that really piqued your interest. Maybe look into that and join the community, whether they're on Slack, they're on Discord, they might be on some kind of chat tool where you can say, hey, who can I speak to about finding a team to join? And if you don't feel comfortable enough to write code for a project, there's dozens of different teams in different areas that you can do. You can write content, you can, you can do editing, you can, there's a lot. It's like a project is kind of designed like a business. There's, the business team and a lot of different areas. Network with that community. This will really help you learn about what is available, where help is needed that you can possibly be helpful with, and figure out where you can best fit. And this is where you can start building your contribution portfolio. Make friends, network with people in the community in that project, and add that information to your resume. It would look really great. This shows that you care about developers, you care about helping projects and being part of projects and learning as much as you. Next slide. Slide 8. So this is my contribution portfolio, not portfolio, but like the timeline of how I started. I got asked like, oh, we have an issue where with this open source project, we have a lot of bug fixes. We have a lot of issues that are fixed, but it requires 3 people testing each code fix for it to be pushed into GitHub. And there's not really many bug testers. So, okay, well, I'll join the bug squad and test all these fixes and confirm and, write a report and make sure everything works. So I did that for a while, which I ended up meeting people on the extensions team, which is like the plugin team for WordPress as an example. And then I was in that for a couple years and then moved into being like basically assisting managing the whole team and hiring people and bringing people on the team. And then I ended up joining the board of directors and kind of leading the whole organization. And then I ended up switching to being a developer advocate and doing presentation and keynoting and PHP events, telling people about this project, about the major changes in our newest version. And then I ended conferences, and where I found my niche was more on the leadership side of things, which made me realize maybe I should move into management or executive leadership throughout my career. So that's something I've been working towards. trying to figure out how to start contributing to MLH. GitHub has a lot of resources like, oh, how to find a way to contribute to your first open source project. I mean, you can just randomly find projects on GitHub, or you can actually join an official community and engage with them and figure out what you want to do with that. Next slide. So personal brand. That's one thing that I was working on naturally, because I was just really trying hard to get my name out there. I started following people on social media, a lot of influencers and a lot of people that I really look up to, but no one would follow me back. It was just all me following everyone. And like, like what makes them different in comparison to me? Oh, they all have like some kind of personal brand. They have personal websites. They have a social media presence. So, you know, I created a personal site. I don't have one anymore because I don't really need a personal site at all, and it's not fun maintaining it. Create a personal website. Ignore the sub part of it, and add your projects there. Put your resume there. Put information about you. Put what your hobbies are, what you enjoy learning, what you're currently learning, and get people to learn more about who you are. So you're not just a name on a piece of resume, you're an actual person with with likes, with you're just more of a human, basically. Social media presence is important. Following software engineers and industry thought leaders, learn and engage with them. The two areas where I see where all the developers hang out at are Twitter and dev.to. Dev.to is a blogging platform like Medium, but it is not paid to read. It's dev.to is I think they just open sourced it, and it's a community of developers that built a tool, and you blog basically with Markdown, which is really fun. I really like to write my blog posts with Markdown. Networking is probably the most important thing. Next slide, slide 10. Networking will eventually lead to being recommended to jobs in the future. Like you have to network with others. Social forums, dev forums, GitHub, Discord, Slack communities, virtual meetups, in-person meetups, conferences. If you can't afford conferences, a lot of these conferences offer scholarships. Fill out a form why you deserve a scholarship. Maybe you don't have the funds to attend. For scholarships is talking about the contributions you've made to help other developers, makes you more above others to be able to get accepted. Well, it just helps more. And it is really hard to network when you're just starting. You don't know anybody, because I've been at that point. I don't know anyone, nobody. And I just made one friend at my first conference I went to, and I'm like, what do I do? How do I find people? He's like, sign up for Twitter. But this was back in 2012. Sign up for Twitter. Here's a list of people to follow. Here, like check out my Twitter and follow the people I'm following, because these are like really great people to follow. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll start out by doing that. So I'm offering the same for you all. I would say about 95% of the people I follow are all software engineers or in tech in some way. And then there's some UFC fighters that I follow too. So ignore that part. And, go down the list and figure out like what communities they're part of. And if you follow them, a lot of them I follow are very positive people that are very educational and helpful to developers. If you go on dev.to, you can follow very specific content. if you want to follow Vue.js content writers, you would go to dev.to/t/view, and there's a filter for the type of content you want to view. So I would definitely encourage that, and just following more people, and you don't have to engage with them, but if you do, it's always nice. It's always helpful. Next slide. Networking part 2, because there wasn't enough on that part. Events and hackathons. Of course, MLH is known for being really great at this, participating in more virtual events, participating in in-person events. I still do this now to this day. I was even an attendee at a hackathon probably the last couple of years for fun. And I am still really good friends with the people that I met at the hackathon. And it's really great. It's nice to grow these organic friendships and engineers in the field. Discord, Slack, like even Vue.js has a Discord channel or Discord server for every Vue chapter. And then there's the global Vue. Jamstack has communities on Slack. Like all of these technologies has a community where you can engage and talk to other developers and network with them. It's, if you are an introvert and don't like to, or prefer not to meet people and go out there and meet people person to person, virtual, especially in 2020 is huge, and it's just as efficient, it's just as useful as being in person. Does anyone have any questions at this point in these specific subtopics? Do we have any questions? I wonder if my AirPods are dead or not.
Feel free to unmute and actually share your question if you have one.
Looks like Joshua has a question. He said a few slides back. Let's see, I can open up my chat from here. Were your contributions to Joomla done in your free time while you were also holding a full-time job, or were these roles your full-time focus? All of those contributions were on my free time for fun. I did it because I was really enjoying doing something for the greater. I was definitely not allowed to do it during my job. My company did not understand what open source was even, or developer communities. I worked for a different kind of department that didn't understand that. So I would work my, 8 to 5 job. I would come home, I would eat dinner, and I had babies at that time, take care of my babies and make dinner. And then I would spend the rest of the night working on the projects. So hours a night contributing. You don't really need to do that much, maybe a few hours a week. Really highly involved in this project, and it became a big part of my life out of choice. Next question: we frame our contributions on our resume. That's a great question, but it is an area that I have struggled with in the past. But I have felt like I have my experience, and then I have my open source community involvement, and that's 3 pages. My resume is 7 pages because I have really no way to make it any less than that, because I've just done so much and been involved with so much, and I have a lot of experience, and it all needs to get there on this pages. I don't even think they read my resume anymore. It's like most of my positions are now just me being recruited to companies because I've been in the industry for a while. But yeah, I separate experience and then open source community involvement. Before I wrote the word volunteering or volunteer involvement is great. If you can make that more brief, that's even great too. What would you suggest on managing tasks like side projects and work, even though having Trello cards and prioritizing work helps, but still it can be difficult to fit so many things in limited hours? Oh my gosh, that's like the big money question. Like personally, the way my mind works, I can organize a lot of that data. Like some people can think outlines of words. So I have like my work and my personal and everything all outlined in my head. But there are personal organizational tools that people use out there. One thing that I just switched to for work is called Notion. Is my internet working right now? Notion.so. Like, I'm very anti-project management tools for task management because none of them is like good enough for me. But Notion.so, it's like, oh my gosh, like within 20 minutes, I figured out how to use everything. And it's so simple. Like right on the homepage, you can kind of do everything. And the way they built this is all just, you know, very easy to update information. Yay, someone agrees with me. Karen, you must use Notion a lot. It's probably the best UI I've ever dealt with. And this is the first time I've ever agreed at a job. So sign up for Trello and start using Trello. I'll use it for a day and like never use it again. I use Notion and I'm like, wow, I want to use this every day. So I know there's like another one for more personal stuff, but you can use this for personal and work and kind of like make two different sections for that. I can't see my video camera, so I don't know how like close to my face I'm getting. I'm like talking to, I have the chat open. But also, if you go on social media and follow a lot of engineers, you'll notice a lot of these discussions are quite similar. Like, oh, what productivity tool do you use? Dev.to under the tech area, but most of it's tech blogging. You'll find a lot of these discussions and you'll see like what people prefer. And it's really about, you know, what you prefer to use too. Any other questions from the previous subtopics?
Let's see, it looks like you see you have the open source on there, managing tasks. All right, that looks good. So if we can move on to the slides.
Sure. Okay, slide 12. So with mentors, this is one thing that I've done differently than others. And I've always had a mentor for every area. Like when I became a teacher, I had a senior level teacher mentor me whenever I had questions or would help me. Before I even became a developer advocate, before I even started applying for jobs, I reached out to developer advocates at Google and said, hey, this is a field I'm interested in getting into. Would you be willing to maybe have a 30-minute call with me and, you know, give me some advice on, you know, what steps I need to take to be eligible to be hired? You need to have mentors give you resources to help you succeed, basically. Have one for every dream job. You want to become a senior engineer, have a senior engineer mentor. If you can't find a mentor because you don't have much of a network, you can find a lot of resources. There's a lot of websites that list engineering mentors. If you just Google the words find a mentor software engineer, There's so much stuff out there that you can find. There's lists of people that are willing to be helpful. And maybe some people won't respond because they're already mentoring a lot of others, or really it's just one person to respond and be willing to help. I'm at the point where mentors aren't as useful because I'm the one mentoring a lot of developers. And I use engineers and developers interchangeably. But you know, at the moment, I am using a paid coach, and I hired someone 2 years, a year and a half ago, a year and 7 months ago, and paying someone to really help me improve my skills. So, like, giving me actual really good advice at time. You know, this person has to show up, and these are the things that we're working on. Kind of like school, but not. So mentors, especially at the beginning of your career, you have to have one if you want to, you know, really move forward and progress in your career or land your first job. Next slide. Mock interviews. So this is the really, really, really scary part, because I have done the whiteboarding interviewing process and reading the books on data structures and search algorithms and trying to understand all of that. And do I even need to know that question? But find mock interviews. There are coding academies that, you know, have these monthly meetups in person that will that does whiteboarding workshops. Find whiteboarding workshops. Find whiteboarding virtual workshops. I'm sure MLH has a lot of these. Practice until you feel comfortable. When I was prepping for my whiteboarding, I had a friend who loves doing whiteboarding for a hobby. That's like all he does is coding challenges. And we work together on pair programming, like every day, trying to solve a problem. 1 to 2 questions every day. And there's a lot of resources online. There's a lot of examples on how to do it on YouTube. There's books available. Books didn't really help me because I'd read a chapter and I'd forget everything I read. It's really about practicing and typing and doing it and trying to solve it. If you have no idea even where to start, look at solved problems and kind of understand like the breakdown of how it solves. And HackerRank is a great one to use. Which brings us to a question that was asked by the community on the next slide. How do you feel about having algorithmic questions in interviews? Do they really measure a developer's caliber? Should I focus on them since I'm not really good at it, but have excellent projects and experience to show for my resume? And here, this is an actual thread that I've seen so many times on Twitter of these actual conversations, like, do I really need to learn this? So there's gonna be, it depends on what company you wanna work for. You should probably do the research on, you know, what are your dream companies to work at? And what are their interview process like? What's their interview process like? If they do coding challenges, then of course you would have to, you know, really set yourself up for that. So here's my experience from understanding the purpose of whiteboarding. Personally, I don't 100% agree with that. I think the best interview question would be more like, here's a previous problem we've encountered at work. Let's work together, you and our team, to solve this problem and see how you work together and how you do it. That would be more of a realistic interview question. But another problem with that is they feel like they're solving an actual problem that they can't solve themselves and trying to get free work out of it, but it shouldn't be the case at all. Do they measure your caliber, your ability in a special way? So here's what I see whiteboarding, like what they see in you for whiteboarding. When they ask a question, they're like, okay, how do you start it? Like, you see a problem's in front of your face. How do you begin with that problem? Are you just gonna go and just write amazing, beautiful, well-written code? Okay, you wrote all this code, but maybe you didn't even solve the problem because you went a completely different direction and you didn't really even do what you're supposed to do, but you thought you did. So the beginning of a whiteboarding question, you should be asking questions. You should be making sure that you're going in the correct direction. Because if you just go straight into it, that's like a big red flag to them. They're going to feel like you just jump into trying to solve something really quick. So they're looking for actual different areas of your skill. Do you start out by asking questions? Do you understand what you're doing before you start? So that's like the first section of whiteboarding that they look for. And, you know, another thing that they're looking for is how you think. So even though it's not normal to think out loud while you're coding, they want you to think out loud. They want to see how you're trying to figure something out. Like, to me, I feel like whether you properly solve it or not shouldn't matter. It's really how you're thinking out loud and how you're breaking it down and what questions you're asking throughout to make sure you're going the right direction, and, you know, what algorithm you decided to use to solve that. So that's very, very helpful. If you're very against and don't ever want to do a whiteboarding interview, go for different tech companies that doesn't do that. Glassdoor.com will tell you what kind of tech questions they ask. They also tell you salaries for the company. Glassdoor.com is a very popular tool. I always look at that for interview questions. That works mainly for more lower level jobs. For higher level job and salary information. So you can get a lot of information for junior positions for sure. A lot of the actual interview questions and maybe how they solved it and stuff. Next question. Next slide. So interview prepping. So this is my process before I start an interview. Like, right before, I do as much research as I can about the company. What are their values, their principles? What is their product? What is their technology? What is their technology trying to solve or do? Try it out, make something with it. Just be like slightly familiar with it. If you have, when you're in an interview and you're like, oh, I've never used it before, I have no idea what it is, will probably not be helpful at all. You know, getting started docs, this was really great, here's what I made. That makes you stand out, because I can guarantee you maybe they're interviewing 5 other people and maybe none of them even have ever seen it before. So that right there puts you, you know, in front of the stack of people. Mental health. Here's something that's been really, really helpful for me. And I do the same thing before I present too. Do some exercising, do some jumping jacks, increase your heart rate, basically. Helps you think more clearly. Listen to some music, practice on your breathing, feel less tense, feel less nervous. And this really, really helps you think better during your interview. You want to be more sharp with answering your questions. And, you know, if you're feeling very tense and nervous, you're going to say the things that you wish you didn't say, like, oh man, I wish I can go back to that question and redo that question, but it's too late. I got really like nervous. You really have to do this. The mental health part will be very, very helpful on, you know, be more successful with your interview. Next question. Next slide. I keep saying question because I see the big word question. So that answers the question of how do you recommend preparing for interviews. So company research, mental health, and feeling confident from all of your interview practice. So next slide, 17. Career growth. How do you continually move up once you land a job? So basically, what is your main focus? Ignore the second part. I keep making copies of the slides and then not deleting parts of it. So career growth is something I've continually worked on nonstop to move up. Are you mainly trying to make more money? Do you want more responsibilities? Do you want to become more senior? Move into management and figure out what your focus is and your timeline. And 2 years from now, what do you want to be doing? I want to be managing a team, or I want to be a principal developer in 5 years from now. And this is where a mentor will help you, and you'll find your mentor from your network, and everything kind of, you know, links together in a big circle. And figure out what your focus is, and, you know, and work towards that. And there's going to be like a whole timeline of things that will help you get to that point. And my personal career growth plan is management, director, and VP for a tech product. So that's, you know, I'm doing a lot of work right now to get to that point. Next slide. So this is where I can answer the question, how to grow a career into more than being a developer and more oriented towards being a leader, manager, and tips on laying groundwork for this early on would be great too. So this is something that I'm currently working on. I want to be a manager. My current company, during my interview process, is like, I mentioned, like, I'm already doing the same work. I already have the same role. I'm more interested in doing, you know, managing or leading projects or doing stuff more along those lines. You have to be vocal about where you want to be. In your current job, if you want to manage the team, you need to speak to the person you report to. It takes a lot of guts to say, hey, like, I'd like to have a talk with you. I have an interest in managing or being a leader. Is there someone that can mentor me at the company to give me guidance on how to work towards this? What are things that I need to improve on to become better? Oh, well, maybe you need to learn to delegate more, learn to not take on so much and then feel behind all the time. It's hard to work towards being a leader, being behind and taking on too much. Learn to speak up and be, you know, open and honest, and learn to say no. So you have to learn to really communicate what you want. You want to lead, let everyone know that. If you just wait for that promotion and wait for something to happen, it's not going to happen because they have no idea that that's something you want. If you are looking to manage at a different company, not your current company, you should find a mentor that's a manager, a software engineering manager, and say, what steps did you take to get there? Ask questions about it. What kind of skills do I need? Read job descriptions for the job that you want and work towards those items. And, you know, you can really set yourself up for that kind of success. Next question. Next slide. Is it actually possible to make a good impact at a big company? I see the higher ups are in meetings all day and the individual contributors spend days, months working on something that may not even see the light of days. So that's something that I've been working on a lot, is trying to make impact. You know, I've always been that person that just, like, you know, buries my head and just works and gets things done. And, you know, I'll get upset. Oh, look, all the managers are doing that. Or I feel like we're going the wrong direction on that. And then people agreeing with me and nobody's saying anything about it, because it's scary to speak up and say, hey, we're doing this wrong. This is the way we should be. And it would make a big impact on what we're doing. So I feel confident enough, especially because it's easier for me to get a job being, in the field for so long. I am more vocal about my thoughts. And that's something I realize if I can go back in time, I wish I've always been that way. You're not going to get fired for making suggestions on how to improve your company. You're there for good intentions, for good things. So, have a good relation with people higher than you and talk to them and say, hey, I have these ideas. I would like to make some suggestions. Like, okay, great. And then nothing happens. You need to discuss this. Like, you need to be serious. Like when higher ups see you being very serious and adamant about your thoughts, and you have action items and you have a plan, they're like, okay, like we're gonna do something about this. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Like, you can make an impact. You have to take action to make that impact. You can't just politely and lightly bring it up here and there and hope something happens. Like, you can be the change in your company. You can be that impact. Maybe everyone else is thinking the same and they're shy about it. Maybe even leaders are shy about that. Like, you'd be surprised how often or how many people will be on your side if you have that voice. I think that answers that question, hopefully. Next slide. Resumes and cover letters. How do I write a good cover letter? So a few people had the same question. So I went and opened up my previous cover letters, and I broke it down to what it actually says. So that's on the next slide. Go ahead and change it. So my first sentence was like, what position am I applying for? Because I'm sure they just forget as soon as they open the file. Okay, what is this cover letter for? Okay, I'm applying for the junior software engineering position for X company that I found on, I don't know, Indeed.com or LinkedIn. Okay, great. You're applying for that job. Okay, who are you and why are you applying for this job? What is your education experience that makes you applicable for the job? What value will you bring to the company if you are hired? And why should they hire you? What makes you stand out? What makes you different than all the other candidates that makes you a better option for the job? Without saying, because I feel like I'm the best option for the job. You need to, why? What value you bring and why? So really think about the value you bring, and kind of maybe put together an outline of what you think you're really great at. I'm really great at, being able to pick up new technologies, learn it quickly, and mentor other people on my team. I troubleshoot really great. Like I will work through a problem until it's solved, and read other examples of cover letters. But one thing I would suggest not to do is using a cover letter template and using wording that everyone else is using. You want to use your own words. Your cover letter is you. If they read 50 different cover letters, they all sound the same, but yours sounds honest and true to who you are. You're probably going to stand out in comparison to everyone else. If English isn't your first language, there is a lot of people that will be willing to help. English is my first language, but I grew up in a non-English speaking with grammar and writing well my whole life. So I still, even to this day, have people help like edit and look at my writing. So don't be afraid to say, hey, you know, you seem like a great writer. Would you be willing to just look through my cover letter and make some suggestions about it? I do that with my blog posts. Like to me, my blog post looks perfect in writing. As someone else looks at it, I'm like, oh man, like you have like 20 mistakes in the first 3 paragraphs. So no one's perfect, right? Reaching out for help is okay. It's how you improve and how you become better. Next slide. So I definitely want to thank you for allowing me and being patient from my new internet issues, for listening to my workshop. And you can follow me, twitter.com. I'm very active on Twitter, on dev.to. My content is going to be more around leadership area, since that's the area I'm moving more into. You're welcome to DM me questions at any time. And if you have questions now, you're welcome to ask now. Thank you. But I'm sure a lot of you will come up with questions down the road. So just feel free to throw me a private message, and I know there's been some people who are like, oh, I've just been like, I just felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to waste your time. You probably have so many people messaging you. Really, no one's messaging me because they think everyone's messaging me. No one's messaging me. I like to spend my time helping others and sharing my experience and sharing my knowledge. That's who I am as a person.
Awesome.
I have my old version of these slides on SlideShare, but I'll upload it in the next 5 minutes after this is over.
Perfect. Thank you, Tessa. If anyone does have any questions, let us know. I know we did go a little bit over, but due to tech issues, I think we're fine. Any last minute questions?
Thank you. That's very kind comments. And if you feel like you have worked very hard and you feel like you've been doing a lot of these things already and still struggling to find a job, send me a DM on Twitter. Tell me where you're stuck at, and I'll try to evaluate like what your next step should be.
All right. Well, I think we'll call that good. But yeah, definitely feel to reach out to Tessa. Also know that we are going to be doing a lot more career focus in the next few weeks until the end of the fellowship to hopefully prepare everyone for the next steps after the fellowship and graduating.
Thank you. Thanks for all the kind comments, everyone. And I wish everyone success and money, or just success.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.